She died a few years ago. What? Are you serious? Jonathan jumped onto his feet and asked incredulously. His voice was filled with disbelief and shock. Celine, Wendy, and Angie had their mouths open, not knowing what to say. They wanted to console him, but at the same time, they were afraid that they would tear the old wound open. In the end, they could only remain silent. She died when I was 15 years old. Jack spoke nonchalantly as if he didn't care about it. But those who were keen in listening, they could tell from his voice that he was sad about this event. But all the same, Jack's ego as a man didn't allow him to show any type of weakness in front of women, considering that it was something that had happened for over 4 years now. Although it was something that made him sad, it had already been a while and he had gotten accustomed to it. Jonathan was silent for a long while as he stared blankly. He himself failed to believe what he had just heard. Just a few seconds ago, he was completely ecstatic, thinking that he would make his mother happy after giving her information about his aunt's whereabouts. But now, he was sure that as long as his mother received information that her sister was dead, she would be aggrieved. Jonathan wasn't ready to make her bear that kind of burden as of the moment. She was already under great pressure knowing that her son was facing threats of life every moment that he was out. Additionally, he had left home for over a year now, and his mother hadn't seen him for a long time. Just thinking about going back with bad news, he couldn't help but feel his heart ache for her. It was only after a long period of time had passed that he turned his gaze towards Jack. He wondered what Jack was feeling at the moment, considering the fact that he was the direct victim. Seeing the atmosphere was getting somber, Jack decided to shift the topic. So, what kind of people are trying attacking you? Upon noticing that Jack didn't want to talk about the matter at the moment, Jonathan went with the flow. Well, I'm pretty sure that they are from my second uncle's side. The incident where your mother left home had ruined most of his plans. In other words, he was the one who had cooperated with some of Mum's uncles and aunts to orchestrate the plan of marrying her and her sister to a scumbag. As for why I'm sure about it, it is simply because my investigation so far has pointed towards him. Furthermore, he also has a son, who is currently 22 years old and is also running for the position of the family head. Jonathan concluded. In response to his words, Jack simply raised his brows, clearly not interested in matter of the fight between the heirs for the position of the family head. You are also part of the Gesta family. Do you want to come back and try taking over the position of the family head? Jonathan asked. Aren't you worried that I will take the position away from you? Jack jokingly asked in return. Hee hee, I am confident that you cannot defeat me. Jonathan snickered in reply. Anyway, I'm not interested in such things. Moreover, I'm sure that the moment that I'll step in the compound, there will be some people who will definitely be against me. And what I know is that there will be many of them trying to push me out. So I think I better live my life the way it is, rather than getting involved. Jack waved his hand in dismissal. Wendy, Angie, and Celine were surprised that Jack had no interest in the inheritance of hundreds of billions worth of assets. Although when compared to the other provinces in the country, their families were indeed good. But when they went back to the capital, if they was supposed to be compared to other families, they were nothing special. Their assets were only worth a few billions of dollars. And now Jack was refusing to take the opportunity to try obtaining the hundreds of billions of dollars worth of assets. But thinking about how Jonathan mentioned that he was facing the danger of assassination from time to time, they thought that it would be better if he didn't go. The group chatted with each other. It was only during this chat that Jack knew why Wendy had confused him to be the one that had saved her. It turned out that Jonathan was the one that had saved her back then. In any case, now that the situation was clear, Jack hoped that Wendy would finally stop bugging him with the issue of the two of them getting engaged. Do you want to go back with me to see my mother? Jonathan asked. Not now, but I'm sure that I can do that by next year. As for now, I don't think that I can do that. Jack shook his head in reply. He still had to be wealthier and stronger than the Gesta family. Only then would he have the qualifications to face those that had made things hard for his mother. Although she was already dead, he was not willing to let some of the debts unpaid. They dared to make some stupid plans using his mother for their own benefits. Since she couldn't repay them, he would do that in her place. Furthermore, the payment would have to be greater than the pain that they had caused her. As for his father, he too had to get punished. After all, his mother had even parted with her sister just so that she could be with him. In the end, he didn't even marry her. He threw her to a corner and completely ignored her existence. His mother could have gone back to the Gesta family, but in the end, she stayed at the Alfonso family, a very tiny family in the eyes of the Gesta family, just because she loved him. She grieved from time to time, and Jack had caught her from again and again. But all the same, she didn't say a word. She never told him to hate his father. She didn't do that even after suffering under the hands of the Alfonso family. In the end, she died. As for the cause of her death, she had gotten sick all of a sudden and died in 2 months. There were completely no signs of what disease she was suffering from. The time that they had gone to the hospital, the doctor simply stated that she wasn't sick at all. But his mother had lost strength in her body, and at the end of it, she died. As he thought of this, Jack suddenly thought of something that made him furious. But he didn't let his anger explode. Instead, he held it in as he tried analyzing the situation. It seemed that he had to look into the matter concerning his mother's death. The 2 wives of his father were always scheming against her, and Brenda had taken after her mother. So, Jack thought that there might be something fishy about her death. They were in Crystal City, so it was normal that they could manipulate a doctor to tell them that there was nothing wrong with his mother's health. As for the reason as to why they always tried making things hard for him and his mother, to this date, Jack had no clue. But it seemed that he would have to look into the matter. After all, it wasn't that simple. As Jack was lost in his thoughts, he was interrupted by Jonathan. "Need my help to know who wanted you dead?" Jack shook his head in response. "No need at all. I can handle it." After that, he decided to make a call. "Denali, can you come to Venture City by tomorrow?" "Okay, boss." Denali replied. Although he knew that she was busy, he still thought that it wouldn't hurt if she could leave some of the tasks to Ayush and Tracy. Working together with Maxwell, they would be able to merge the companies. And if there were any changes that had to be made, they could do it later on. So, Jack had to solve his curiosity at the moment. Another reason why he called Denali to come over was because he wanted to have time to finish the system task. Otherwise, there was going to be a punishment. And if there was going to be an assassin, he could handle that guy easily. After all, he wasn't a professional combatant for nothing. "Okay then. If you think that there's something that you can't handle, just let me know." Jonathan shrugged in response. Since they had chatted for a while now, they had gotten familiar to each other. Jack's personality and Jonathan's weren't opposing to each other. So, they hit it off. Added to the fact that they were cousins, although the relationship between them wasn't that deep yet, at least they would do something for the other because of their mothers. "I will be going back to the resort for now. I still have something to do there. And just like you, if there's anything that you need, as long as I can do it, I will," Jack stated as he got to his feet, ready to leave. "I'll find you at the resort then." Jonathan nodded. Celine got up and followed Jack out of the room. Wendy, on the other hand, wasn't sure if she was supposed to remain to talk to Jonathan or if she was supposed to follow Jack. During the chat, she came to realize that she had been watching the 2 of them together. In other words, sometimes, parts of the traits and character traits that she had found belonged to Jack, while others were Jonathan's. In the end, since Jonathan was hiding and had hid his information, she had gotten the information on Jack, though it was only shallow. In the end, even her grandfather had gotten information on Jack, and that was the exact reason as to why they had gone to the Alfonso family. "Wendy, can you stay behind? I would like to have a simple chat with you." Jonathan's voice reached her ears, making her finally decide to stay. Since the 2 had things to talk about, Angie decided to go after Jack and Celine. They were going to the resort at the end of the day. So, she wasn't worried that Wendy would get lost. She was an adult after all. After getting out of the hospital, the 3 took a taxi and went back to the resort. On the way, they chatted about a few things and made jokes. It didn't take them long for them to arrive at the resort. When they got there, they found that a few of the young masters and ladies were looking for them. They had tried calling the 3 girls, but it ended up with the call not being picked or another one that was switched off. As Celine and Angie dealt with the crowd of young masters and ladies, Jack, who wasn't familiar with them, decided to take a walk. He was curious about who it was that knew that he was here and had sent someone to kill him. He had come here using the Eurocopter. So, it was normal that even if there was someone that was keeping watch over him, that person wouldn't know where he went unless he followed Jack with a helicopter. In other words, that person had seen him here, and that was the exact reason as to why they had tried attacking him. In the end, they never thought that they would actually get Jonathan instead of him. He didn't have a definite destination. He was simply moving from place to place, trying to catch the attention of the one that had sent the assassin. Although Denali could help him in knowing who it was that had sent Viper when hacking into Viper's phone, it wouldn't hurt if he could find that person in advance. He was here to relax, but at the end, someone made him change into a detective or a decoy. Whatever that was, he was willing to do that, clearing any kind of danger before facing others that might be hiding in the dark. As he was walking around, he felt that there was someone that was watching his movements. In fact, he realized that there were 3 people who seemed to be following him from a distance. And from their movements, Jack could confirm that they were professionals at stalking others. If he didn't have sharp senses, he might not have discovered them at all. Knowing that the fish had caught bait, Jack headed towards the forest. He was sure that they would follow him if it was true that they wanted to kill him. In just 20 minutes, he had gotten into the forest, about a kilometer from the resort. After getting here, he didn't make a move and waited for them to do that first. And just like that, 10 minutes went by with none of the sides making a move. Jack was just about to get impatient and make them come out of their hiding place when he suddenly noticed that there was actually another person that was heading their way. It turned out that they were actually waiting for someone else. And from the looks of it, the person that they were waiting for was their leader. Jack's lips twitched as he thought, one wasn't enough to deal with Jonathan. So, they thought that it would be better if they sent 4 of them at the same time? Well, good for me then. I can have several targets that I can use to get information from so that I can get closer to the mastermind. Jack didn't like the fact that he was in the light while the enemy was in the dark. This was one of the most dangerous things. Dealing with an enemy that you can't see and you know nothing of. If the enemy made a move, it would be hard for him to anticipate it. Additionally, he wouldn't know what the enemy would do. The enemy might have full information on him. In the end, Jack wouldn't know what to guard and what not to. After 2 minutes, the person who had just arrived led the 3 to approach him. From his movements, Jack could tell that he had no intention of sneaking an attack at him. I guess that you already know of our arrival, right? The man spoke as soon as he arrived a few meters behind Jack. Jack turned around and faced him. The man was wearing a sleeveless red shirt. It was like the sleeves were ripped from it. As for the bottom, he was wearing black sweatpants and a pair of black boots. With a smile on his face, Jack said, "You took your time to get here. Hee, you don't seem nervous at all. Maybe you don't recognize me?" The man chuckled and asked. And as he posed the question, he pointed at a spider tattoo on his bare left arm. The tattoo was drawn at the very top of the left arm, closer to the shoulder. "Well, should I know you?" Jack asked in surprise. This was actually the first time that he was meeting this guy. So, how comes this guy was expecting that he would know him just from the tattoo? Although he wasn't sure about it, he decided to keep the tattoo in his mind. Maybe it implied something that he didn't know. Perhaps it would point him towards the mastermind. Seeing that Jack seemed to be serious about not knowing him, the man laughed amusedly and said, "Oh, Jonathan, I thought that you, as one of those that are trying to be the next family head of the Gesta family, would have a lot of information. In the end, I thought too much." Jack frowned at the mention of the name Jonathan. How the hell was this happening? Could it be that karma was striking? Jonathan was attacked because they had thought that he was Jack. And now, Jack was actually being attacked because they thought that he was Jonathan? Wasn't this ridiculous? What's even more laughable was that, while Jonathan was attacked by a single person, he was being attacked by 4 of them at the same time. Maybe I should change my appearance a little bit. Being mistaken for someone else when someone wants to kill you is absolutely not good at all. Jack muttered loudly as he touched his head. Hearing Jack's words, the man was surprised. He asked in confusion, "What do you mean by being mistaken for others? Are you trying to imply that you aren't Jonathan? Why else would I be stressed up for that? I was mistaken for Jonathan, and I got engaged. Now I'm being mistaken for him again, and here we are, someone is trying to kill me." Although it was true that I was expecting that someone was going to come after me, I never thought that it would be unrelated people. Jack sighed as he said these words. The man frowned again. And unlike Viper, who had simply thought that Jonathan was trying to find a way out of the situation, the man here was different. He had done enough investigation since a year ago. He would have already attacked a long time ago had it not been for the fact that Jonathan had simply disappeared for almost a year now. So, who are you? Wanting to confirm his speculations, the man asked. At least you were reasonable. Anyway, I'm Jack and not Jonathan. As for Jonathan, he's my cousin. Jack didn't hide anything. He felt that it wouldn't be bad if he spoke a little more. Perhaps he could lure them into telling him who had sent them. Oh, that's unexpected, the man stated. Can I see your ID to confirm your identity? He asked. Too bad that I left my ID in the room that I have booked here in the resort. But can a scanned document with my ID do? Jack took out his phone and asked. No problem at all. The man shrugged his shoulders, as if he didn't care. Till this time, Jack had felt that this guy was pretty strong. Furthermore, there seemed to be something abnormal about him. But he couldn't put a finger on that thing that he felt was unusual. As for why the man was being casual when he was taking out the phone, Jack believed that the guy was pretty confident that he could deal with him even if he had a gun with him. Jack scrolled through the documents in his phone before selecting one of them. Then, he threw the phone to the man. With simple movements, the man grabbed the phone in the air and gazed at the ID on the screen.
Jackson Alfonso?
I think I know a little about you. You should be the son of the twin who had run away from home a few decades ago. Hee, I never thought that you knew about my existence all this while. Jack chuckled as he said these words. But his eyes had already turned cold the moment that this guy said that he knew that his mother actually had him. Didn't that mean that he actually knew where his mother was? Returning the phone to Jack, the man happened to see Jack's cold eyes. He simply chuckled and explained, No need to worry about that. It's not hard for me to know that. Actually, there are people from the Gesta family that already know of your presence, but they have never made a move at all as they had decided to ignore your presence. Jack's expression darkened further. He could smell that there was something here, and he would have to get all the information that he could get from this guy. Well then, since you are not Jonathan and there is no payment for me to get your head, I'll just take my leave, the man said and turned around, intending to leave. Although Jack had not expected that this guy would actually do something like that, he still managed to react in time. Well, you have thought that you can simply leave me. But I wonder if you have asked me whether I will let you go or not. The man stopped and looked at Jack with a frown before asking, Are you trying to push your luck? Hee, not at all. Jack smiled coldly before he began rolling the sleeves of his shirt. He then continued speaking while his gaze was focusing on the sleeves. You know, although your target isn't me this time, it's still Jonathan. And all the same, Jonathan is my cousin. So, do you think that I will simply let you go after knowing that you have intentions of killing him? The guy frowned. But before he could speak, a subordinate of his took a step forward and lashed at Jack. You ungrateful bastard. Do you know who he is? He is the Spider, one of the top 10 assassins in the country. He has given you a living grace, but you don't appreciate it? Do you? Before the guy could finish what he was saying, Jack interrupted and said as he looked at the guy called Spider, It will be good if you can keep your dog in check. Otherwise, you can't blame others when it ends up dead. Jack's casual attitude made Spider vigilant of him. But although he was vigilant, it wasn't that much to the extent that he would actually be in a combat-ready mode. Instead, he simply began paying attention to Jack's movements. Although he knew of Jack's existence, he didn't know him well. He had stopped investigating about him when Jonathan disappeared, about a half a year ago. And from all the investigations, he found that Jack was just a harassed teenager. As for where he got his confidence from at this moment, he wasn't sure. All the same, he was sure that he could deal with a youth like him easily. Well, you don't have to mind about that. After all, you might be underestimating my dogs. Spider said with a smile. Is that so? But I would like to deal with the master of the dog directly rather than going through the mob, Jack stated. Then, he continued without giving Spider a chance to speak. It's true that I don't know you at all. But there are facts that make me to have you to stay here as you still have a few questions to answer. Furthermore, just the thought of killing my cousin, because you were paid, doesn't really make me happy. I would like to let you live. But it seems that it's not possible for that to happen as you are just like a moth. Anyway, I'll just have to claim more bonus when I go back for the extra work that I have to do, Spider said before he motioned one of his subordinates to make a move. Not a problem at all. I would really like to make you stay here forever. But I still have some use for you. As Jack finished speaking, one of Spider's subordinates was already charging towards him before throwing a punch. The speed of this guy could be said to be higher than that of a normal adult. But in front of Jack, this was nothing at all. He simply stood there, not making a move. His gaze was still fixed on Spider. Although he could tell that this guy was strong, he was sure that it wasn't by much. Otherwise, if this person was actually stronger than him, Jack was sure that the system would have offered him a mission and given him a reward in advance. Well, that was unless the system couldn't give two tasks at the same time. That would really be regrettable. The man that was attacking Jack, upon seeing that Jack had yet to react although his punch was already approaching his face, he thought that Jack was already scared out of his wits and that he had frozen. As such, he smiled as he thought of smashing the irritable, handsome face in front of him. Just as the punch was approaching Jack's face, Jack finally reacted. At a fast speed, he threw a slap towards the guy. Pa, pa, pa. A slap resounded in the forest, and it echoed a few times. As for the guy that had been slapped on his right cheek, he was forced to do a 270 degrees sideways flip before his head hit the ground. The moment that Jack's hand connected and transferred the force in it, the guy lost a few teeth and fainted before even touching the ground. The two men behind Spider who were looking forward to seeing Jack being pummeled were dumbfounded when they saw their companion simply flipping in the air after the sound of a crisp slap. Their mouths hung open as they stared at Jack in disbelief. Then, they looked at the guy who was already on the ground. He was already out cold. They immediately swallowed hard, especially the guy that was previously lashing at Jack. They didn't even see how it really happened. They had been seeing the punch that was about to hit Jack's face. But in the next second, their companion was down after they heard the sound of slapping. Spider, on the other hand, had managed to see Jack's hand blurring. But he himself hadn't seen how it happened well because he too couldn't follow the speed at which Jack's hand moved. Knowing that it would be impossible for his other subordinates to deal with Jack, he decided to make the move by himself. Although he was surprised that Jack was this strong, he didn't think that Jack was stronger than him. Seeing that Spider was finally willing to make a move by himself, Jack smiled and said, "Show me what you have. I hope that you can make me go all out. I still want to know what my limit is this time." As he said that, he readied himself for combat. But in the end, when he saw Spider's speed and movements, he couldn't help but complain in his heart, "Come on. How comes this guy is an amateur?" With all the bragging, I thought that he might really exchange moves with me and make me experience a real fight. What a disappointment. With Jack's professional combatant ability, it was not just a matter of him having the strength of 5 men combined. Instead, it was the strength plus the fighting experience of a professional combatant. So, he could easily tell that Spider was a novice when it came to fighting. Although he might have some strength, he was still too weak to face Jack. If Jack was 5 men combined, then Spider was actually a combination of 2.5 men. As for his fighting skills, although as an assassin, Spider might have experienced several life and death situations, his skills were still subpar in Jack's eyes. Seeing that Jack was no longer taking him serious, although he was always good at keeping his emotions in check, Spider couldn't help but get angry at Jack. In that exact moment, he had decided that he would make sure that Jack died a cruel death for daring to look down on him. As he thought of this, his eyes turned extremely cold as his killing intent surged into the air. Then, he immediately kicked at Jack, thinking that it would be good if he could take the opportunity where Jack was still looking down on him so that he could deal a lot of damage to him. Tup! The kick landed. But Spider's eyes contracted as he gazed at his right leg that was still hanging in the kicking position. At this time, his kick that contained a lot of power had indeed landed on the target as the target didn't move. But the leg had actually landed in Jack's palm that in turn easily blocked the kick. It was as if there was no power behind the kick. Jack smiled before he folded his fingers and gripped onto Spider's leg. Spider wanted to retract his leg, but it was too late as Jack had already taken action. Putting in some strength in his left hand, Jack pulled Spider using his leg before he threw him. With his strength, it wasn't hard for him to throw a man. Spider hadn't expected that Jack would do something like that, and seeing that he was going to hit a tree, he immediately used his hands to protect his head.
Bang!
Thud! The speed at which he was thrown was fast, and that the moment that his body hit the tree bark first, there was a sound of the collision before he fell onto the ground. At this moment, Spider understood what was meant to fear someone. To be able to throw a man who weighed over 60 kilograms using one hand, and to be able to do that easily, just what kind of strength did Jack actually possess? Currently, Spider could feel that he was hurt, and his combat strength had been greatly diminished. He felt that his spinal cord had been injured, and with every simple movements that he made, he was going through a lot of pain. Seeing that Spider was actually struggling to stand up, Jack smiled and said, "You are a disappointment if you are actually amongst the top 10 assassins in the country. You are so weakened that you are already down with one of my moves." Hearing Jack's words, Spider, who was initially struggling to get back onto his feet, gritted his teeth in anger. But all the same, he knew that he was no match for Jack. But for his reputation, especially in front of his subordinates, he didn't continue staying on the ground. He still gritted his teeth and stood up through the tearing pain that he felt on his spinal cord. He was lucky that the spinal cord wasn't broken. Otherwise, his limbs would have been paralyzed immediately. And as of now, he could only use the tree as a source of support so that he wouldn't fall to the ground. "So, why don't you tell me about how and why you know about my mother? And if you can, also tell me who sent you to assassinate Jonathan." Jack clapped his hands and asked with a cold smile. To an assassin, Jack would never be kind at all. If he had to kill for the first time, then he would definitely do that without hesitation. After all, if he didn't kill, he would end up dead. What's more, who could guarantee that this guy wouldn't be given a mission to come and assassinate him or his loved ones in the future? So, he dared not to leave dangers that would come hunting him in the future to make him regret his decisions. Give it up? There's no way that. I'm going to tell you a thing. Still going through a lot of pain, Spider replied. Okay then, let's see if this will make you speak, Jack said before stomping on the neck of the guy that was already knocked out by him. Crack. The sound of bones breaking could be heard as Jack crushed the neck of the guy, ending his life. Spider never expected that Jack would use such a move on him. The three people with him were actually those that he had been training for years. After he felt that they were good enough, he would take them with him on missions that were not dangerous. They were the ones that would do the stalking before informing him. He would let them finish the job if the opponent was weak. So, till this time, he had developed some good relationship with them, and they were like family to him. Seeing one of them die, he was grief-stricken and angry at the same time. What about now? Can you talk? Jack's voice drifted to his ears. The remaining two subordinates, on the other hand, didn't know what to do. Their minds were in chaos. Apart from fear, they were not sure on what they were supposed to do. They had an impulse to run as far as they could. But in the end, their loyalty towards Spider made them hesitate. Spider was the one that was taking care of them. He had saved them when they were in their worst situations. So, they were unwilling to leave him, although they knew that they were no match for Jack, considering that he could easily defeat Spider, who was like a supreme being to them. Seeing that Spider wasn't talking, Jack shifted his gaze to the remaining two men who were still standing there, not sure what to do. On seeing Jack's actions, Spider panicked and asked, "Can you promise me that you will let them live as long as I give you the information?" Jack looked at him and said, "Why would I leave something that will simply come back and bite me? I can see their resentment towards me already. Do you think that by letting them live I can make them love me or forget about this incident? That's not going to happen." Before Spider could say a word, Jack continued, "Don't think much of it. Besides, I don't think that you are in a position to bargain with me. The only thing that I can promise you is that you will all receive a quick and painless death." Spider's heart sank. He had actually brought these three with him because he had thought that the mission would be simple. In the end, he had brought them to their death. Although he thought that at the end of the day they would all end up dead, whether he gave the information or not, he thought that it would be good if the two of them could die a simple and painless death rather than a cruel one. Looking at Jack's cold eyes, added to the action where without hesitation he had killed one of the three, it meant that he would actually do what he had said. On the other hand, it wasn't that Jack was a cruel and cold-blooded person. Instead, it was just that, if there was something that would make him furious, it would be something that was related to harming his mother. An assassin having information on his mother was definitely not something good. He would definitely be willing to kill as long as there was need for him to do that. And even after killing the other guy, he didn't think much of it. That was a person who had the blood of several innocent people on his hands. So, there would be nothing wrong with eliminating him. All right, I'll tell you then. The one that sent me to kill Jonathan was your second uncle. He wants his son to be the family head in 5 years' time. As for how I got the information on your mother, it was also due to your second uncle. Spider began explaining. His words broke as he tried enduring the pain that he was feeling. He knew about your mother long time ago, and if I'm not wrong, he might be involved with her death. Spider continued. Jack's expression turned colder when he heard that his second uncle might be involved with his mother's death. He had just realized that there might be something fishy about her death. In the end, although it was not 100% confirmed, at least his involvement was there. Anything else? Jack asked. Knowing that it was coming to an end, Spider shook his head and said, Nothing much. Just keep your promise. Seeing that there was nothing else to say, Jack immediately made a move. Before the two could react, their necks were broken and they fell onto the ground lifelessly. After that, Jack killed Spider by breaking his neck using his incredible strength. With this done, he turned his attention to what he was supposed to do next. He searched and took the phones of all the three of them. Then there came a problem. How was he going to deal with the corpses? He had never done this before. He thought for a while before he decided that it would be good if the private team could deal with it. It was just that the team wasn't completely loyal to him, and so he didn't want to get them involved with this. After racking his brain for a while, he found the best solution. Taking out his phone, he made a call. Yes? You called me so early, not even 3 hours have gone by. Want my help with something? Jonathan asked. It should be the other way round, actually. I want you to help yourself after I have repaid the debt. Jack said. What do you mean by that? Jonathan was confused. Well, there's someone calling himself. Not really. He used to call himself Spider. He was here to assassinate you. But unfortunately, he mistook me for you and attacked me instead. Jack explained what had happened. Jonathan was completely surprised that Jack was actually attacked. What's more, he wondered how the heck this person known as Spider found his information. But when he thought that he had called for his subordinates to clear the scene where he fought with Viper, maybe there was someone who had gotten the information that they had come to Volant City. But what he couldn't understand was how that assassin arrived here in just a few hours. One had to know that the distance between Kartu City and Volant City wasn't something that could be covered in 3 hours just because one used a plane. In any case, he caught something in Jack's words. Are you sure that the person that came this time was Spider? He couldn't help but ask. Yeah, he has a spider tattoo on his arm. He claimed to be the one, and I can say that he had some combat ability. Jack explained. That should be him. He is the 7th-ranked top assassin in the country. He is powerful. And if he had gotten me in my current condition, I'm sure that I would be dead. But why are you using past tense when referring to him? Jonathan's voice was solemn as he spoke of Spider. He's dead. He couldn't even stand after I made a single move. I wonder just how weak he was. Jack said, Are you serious that he's dead? If he's not, try to make sure that you avoid him. You can wait till my subordinates come to deal with him. Jonathan stated, Come on. I already said that this guy is dead. I was calling you so that you can send someone to come and clear the scene here. I have never dealt with something like this before. So, I don't have the resources to deal with it. Jack explained. Jonathan couldn't believe it when he heard that it was true that Spider was dead. But hearing Jack's serious voice, he had no choice but to believe it. Give me the location and I'll send them there in around 20 minutes. Jonathan said. His subordinates had always been in the Western Province all this while. It was just that he had never interacted with them all this time, until today. And now, they should be somewhere near Volant City. So, he was sure that they would be where Jack was within 20 minutes. Jack sent him the pinned location before he took his leave. The scene would be easy to clean as there was no blood. The only issue would be disposing the bodies. After leaving, he decided to go back to the room that he had booked. He had no intention of getting closer to the girls for the day because he still didn't know who it was that had the intention of killing him. If the other party saw him with the girls, they might be used as hostages, and they might as well end up getting hurt for something that didn't actually concern them. That night around 9, Denali finally arrived. She didn't waste time and immediately began investigating Viper. He was Jack's main concern because he was his main target. He wanted to know who was the one that had sent him. With Denali's skills, she easily cracked the password of the phone and accessed it. After that, she began going through the contact history. She found that all the calls' history had been deleted. But no matter what, although they were not on the phone, but the data was still recorded somewhere. So, she easily hacked and found the call logs of the calls made during this month. After a long while, a list of names appeared on the screen of her laptop. Jack looked at the screen of the laptop, trying to see if there was someone that he knew and had actually contacted the mercenary. He was sure that the other party had to be someone that he had interacted with. Even if he failed to know the other party's details, he would at least know the name. He began with the calls that had been made, starting with the oldest. He continued dropping till he found one name that he knew all too well. It was Marion. Jack knew her because she was one of Dalton's wives. And she was Brenda's mother. The moment that he found that she had actually made a call, Jack's eyes narrowed. He asked Denali to play the audio of the conversation between the two of them. From the conversation, Jack found that she was the one who had asked Viper to meet up with Brenda in Volant City, as she had something for him. Knowing that Brenda was also involved, Jack didn't waste time scrolling. He simply searched for Brenda's name, and he found that there was actually a conversation between the two on this very day. What's more, from the first conversation, it was about the room that they would meet to discuss the business. As for the second one, it was Brenda informing Viper that the target was actually present here in the resort. With all these clues, how could Jack not know who it was that wanted him dead? Brenda wanted him dead. But what had he done to make her want to kill him? That was a question that only she could answer. Denali, find out where she is now. And if she is present in her room here in the resort, I'll be heading there in a moment. Jack stated. Yes, master. Denali nodded before taking her laptop from Jack. In a moment, she began typing at a high speed. After about 2 minutes, she began watching the CCTV footage from the resort. The videos only contained the scenes of the corridor and not the room. In any case, the video began playing backwards to save them time. If she had left, she would get to know if she had left the room or not. After a while, Denali found that she was still present in the room and informed Jack about it. Jack nodded and left the room and decided to head to that room. But the moment that he opened the door, he happened to see Celine, who was just about to knock on the door. Seeing the door in front of her opening, Celine was at first surprised before she got excited when she saw Jack walking out. She was just about to ask why he had been avoiding her the whole day when she suddenly saw Denali's figure inside the room. Her heart went cold at that instant. She simply couldn't believe that Jack had avoided her all along because he had a woman who was accompanying him. Feeling upset, she immediately turned around and ran away, not giving Jack a chance to ask her anything. Jack was flabbergasted, wondering what was going on. Celine was smiling in 1 second, and in the next, she ran off with her eyes turning red. Not knowing what he had done wrong, Jack shook his head and called Denali. Denali, can you go and look after her till I come back? I won't take long. Okay, master. Denali agreed before she left, chasing after Celine. With her speed and skills, she could easily protect and make sure that Celine wasn't in trouble from the dark. Seeing Denali leave, Jack's expression slightly relaxed. Then, he left and headed to the floor above him. He was going to where Brenda was staying. Not long after, he arrived in front of room number 1278. After taking a deep breath and making sure that all of his emotions were well in place, he knocked on the door. He then heard the sound of footsteps heading towards the door. Then with a click, the door was unlocked but wasn't pulled open. From the information that he had gotten, Jack knew that Viper was supposed to come tonight after he had completed the mission. So, Jack pushed the door open and entered without hesitation. How efficient you are, Viper. You completed the business just as you had stated. I guess there was nothing for me to worry about. Not looking behind, Brenda, who was in pink pajamas that accentuated her curves, headed towards the couch as she spoke. Jack didn't speak and simply followed behind her. He had confirmed that she was indeed the one that had wanted him dead. But what he wanted to know was why. Why are you so silent? Brenda was forced to stop mid-sentence when she turned around and saw that instead of Viper, it was Jack who had entered. Her expression shifted, but she still managed to squeeze a smile and asked in surprise, "Oh, Jack, what are you doing here?" The smile was fake, but the surprise in her voice was genuine. She was completely surprised that Jack was the one that had come here instead of Viper. What's more, he was supposed to be dead, but he was alive, standing in front of her. Another thing that she failed to understand was definitely how Jack knew the room that she was staying. According to what she knew, even if Jack knew where she was, he wouldn't come to greet her, not to mention that he was here at night. Could something have happened? Has Viper betrayed me? Several thoughts ran through her mind as she wondered what was going on and what she was supposed to do if Jack actually knew about the issuing of the mission to kill him. "Good to see you, sister. I came here to visit. Is it bad to visit my sister now that I knew that she was around?" Jack gave her a dazzling smile as he asked. For the first time, Brenda was forced to admit that this little brother of hers was indeed handsome. But at this moment, her heart thumped. She could tell that something was wrong. Jack had never called her sister since he was 10 years old. For him to suddenly start referring to her as sister, there had to be something that wasn't right. Furthermore, this was the first time in over a decade that she was seeing Jack smile this brightly. But she could still see that although Jack was smiling brightly, the smile didn't reach his eyes. "It's not bad for you to do that. But how did you know that I was here?" Brenda tried to calm her racing heart down and asked. Without responding, Jack simply sat on the couch before motioning for Brenda to take a seat. Brenda could immediately tell that something was wrong with Jack's behavior too. This was actually the first time that she had seen Jack this bold. Previously, he wouldn't even dare to retort to her, let alone instruct her to do something. And although it was true that he could retort, it was only on some rare occasions. Not knowing why he was here, she still sat down opposite him and waited for him to speak. Still smiling, Jack said, "Actually, I found that you were here by watching the CCTV footage. And I heard you say that you were here." Brenda was even more confused about the situation. Watch the CCTV footage. Hearing her say that she was here? How was that possible? "Stop joking. How did you really find me here?" Brenda chuckled as she asked. She had managed to put her usual harmless expression. "Well, that is the truth. I heard you asking someone called Viper to come and find you in this room. And, just to make sure that you were here, I had to look through the footage of the resort so that I wouldn't come when you weren't there." Jack explained, patiently. When she heard Jack's words, Brenda's smiling face froze. She looked at Jack with her mouth agape, not knowing what to say. Her heart was racing at this moment. She wasn't sure what she was supposed to do. If Jack knew about her and Viper, that meant that he actually knew that she wanted him dead. And now, he was here to confirm the reason for her to want him dead, or he was simply here to confirm if she was really the one behind it. Trying not to show any weakness, she asked, "Who's Viper that you were talking about?" She had only finished asking the question when she suddenly realized that she had just made a blunder. "Hee, can you come up with something practical? When I was coming in, I heard you say that Viper was efficient and he had finished the business on time. Now, you don't know Viper?" Jack chuckled as he asked. Knowing that there was no way out of the situation, Brenda finally revealed the other side of her expression. Her eyes were cold and almost indifferent as she stared at Jack. "What do you want, Jack? Just go to the point and stop beating around the bush," she stated, her voice no longer as playful as it always was. "I like it now that you are showing me the real you, sister. So, why don't you tell me the reason as to why you want me dead? As far as I can remember, there was no time that we had clashed in that it can lead to a situation where you will want to kill me." Jack, who was no longer smiling, asked. His voice, just like hers, was extremely cold. It was just that his was several notches colder, making Brenda shiver a little. "I know that you might not know this, but the real reason I want you dead is simply because I don't want you to marry that girl from the Farrell family. That's all," Brenda said. Jack looked at her with a hint of surprise. Then, he asked, "And why target me then instead of targeting the initiator of the engagement? You know, I don't like her. With her gone, there would be no marriage. But with me dead, she would make sure to investigate to the end and find who was behind it." "That's where you are wrong, Jack. If I kill her, it would be worse than killing you. If she dies, I'm sure that her grandfather will make sure to find the one behind her death and make sure that the person dies a cruel death. Even the family will be involved. After all, that's a descendant of the Farrell family. Brenda paused. Seeing that Jack's attention was on her, she continued. On the other hand, if I kill you, I can be assured that the marriage wouldn't happen. As for the old man, I'm sure that he wouldn't go all the way out just for you, someone who could be considered as a potential in-law. Jack was amazed by her mind. All the same, he could say that it was this smart mind of hers that had landed her in trouble. She would have never thought that offending him was actually the worst choice that she could make. Not only had the assassination failed, but he was in front of her at this moment. I can say that you have a bright mind as always. But do you think that I'm that stupid to believe that you can simply want me dead just because you don't want me to marry that girl? I know that this is just a small piece of it. So, what are you hiding from me, sister? Jack asked. Brenda clenched her fists tightly when she saw that Jack didn't leave things as they were, and he was trying to pursue further. And every time that she heard him call her sister, she could feel the bone-chilling coldness in his voice. Collecting her courage, she raised her green eyes and stared deeply into his blue ones. Then she asked, I'm not telling you a thing. So, what are you going to do about it? Jack didn't get angry at all. He looked at Brenda, who was seated in front of him, and smiled. The smile made Brenda dumbfounded. According to what she was expecting, Jack was supposed to be frustrated and should try threatening him. But now, there was nothing that showed that he was angry other than the usual coldness that was originally present in his eyes. You want to know what I can do? Okay then, I will show you what I can do. But you have to be careful of what you are asking for. After all, if I can easily get the information about the transaction between you and Viper, you should know by now that I have abilities. As he finished speaking, Jack got onto his feet and left. That's right, he didn't want to kill her just because she wanted to kill him. No, he would have to make sure that he found all her accomplices first. Brenda at the age of 21 was definitely not capable of doing all of this. So, the thing that Jack would start with would be finding the partners in crime. Currently, the only partner that he knew was Marion, Brenda's mother. But he was sure that there had to be more than just that. And as a result, it would need him to do a little more research. As she looked at Jack, who was departing, Brenda's expression darkened. She could tell from Jack's words that he wasn't going to give up on that. He was going to find more about what caused her to attack him. All the same, as she thought of those that were involved, she believed that no matter how strong Jack was, there was no way that he was going to find them nor the real reason. In the end, although she was sure that Jack wouldn't be able to find the information, she decided to take precautions and become vigilant of him. Accidents do happen, and one of them had just happened not long ago where Jack found that she had sent an assassin after him. As for the other one, that would be the change that had occurred to Jack since the last time they met. She wasn't sure about his capabilities, but she would have to investigate about him as fast as she could. Taking a deep breath, she took her phone and decided to make a call. She had to inform her mother that her plan had failed. After leaving the lodging area, Celine decided to find a place where nobody could find her so that she could try to calm down her racing and aching heart. She herself couldn't understand why she would react in such an explosive manner even without confirming about the identity of the other woman who was in Jack's room. All the same, she felt that she was wronged. She soon found herself in a desolate place, a park that was now empty. It was already 10, almost half past to be precise. Celine went ahead and sat on one of the chairs that had been set up here. She began thinking things through. She was wondering if it was true that Jack had a woman whom he considered as his other half or not. But what she was sure about was that she wouldn't want to see him with another woman. Had it been Wendy, although she would be hurt still, she felt that it was better for her sister to be the one rather than another woman that she knew nothing of. It was also at this moment when she was thinking so hard that she finally realized something. Although it was true that she loved Jack, it was also true that Jack didn't know. Or, it could be that he had already noticed it, but it was just that he didn't acknowledge her love for him. As she thought of this, she finally realized that she wasn't really supposed to be angry at Jack. He wasn't her boyfriend. Why would he not have other women? Just because she loved him? As long as their relationship wasn't confirmed, what was there to say? After a period of thinking, she finally came to a resolution. Although she felt that it might make Jack have a bad impression of her, she felt that it was necessary. Even if Jack had a woman, she was willing to try her luck. That's right. She wanted to confess her love for him. Previously, although she had thought that she loved Jack, she still had some doubts about it. But after seeing that there was actually a woman that she didn't know in his room, she came to a realization that she had really fallen for him. She finally realized that there were other women out there other than her and Wendy. Yes, even though the two of them had agreed to compete fairly, who said that the other ladies would agree to that? They couldn't resist Jack's charms and would definitely try using all the means possible to be his woman. And they, on the other hand, were trying to play reserved. What was there to be reserved about if what you were trying to maintain a good image for was taken away at the end of the day? With resolution in her heart, she got onto her feet and decided to go back to Jack and tell him about it. As for why he didn't come after her when she ran away, she didn't even think much of it. She had just taken a few steps when suddenly, she heard several faint footsteps heading her way from behind. It was only at this moment that she realized that she was actually outside and in a desolate place at night, and she was alone. Her heart began racing as she hurriedly walked out of the park. But before she could reach far, a hand came from behind and closed her mouth, giving her no chance to scream. As she tried struggling out of the other party's grasp, she was hit on the neck, and what followed was that she saw everything going blurry before she completely lost her consciousness. After seeing that the target was already knocked out, the youth who had a burly body structure heaved a sigh of relief. If Jack was here, he would recognize him as the guy that had volunteered to beat him up back in the underground parking in Venture City. "Come and help me," the guy called out. Soon, a few people came out of the shadows. They were all wearing black. These were all youths that were part of the group that Celine and Wendy belonged to. Carefully, they carried Celine and headed into the darkness. If one could think carefully, he could see that there was something wrong with the park. Usually, the lights were supposed to be on throughout the night, and there were supposed to be a few security guards that were patrolling and would occasionally pass in this area. But tonight, not only had the lights been switched off, but there was not a single soul in the area for the almost half an hour that Celine was here. Celine would have noticed these details had it not been for the fact that her mind and thoughts were chaotic. She couldn't think of anything else other than what was bugging her heart. As soon as the youths left, a figure of a woman appeared from the shadows. Denali looked at the direction that the group had headed and snorted coldly before following. Her master had given her the mission to protect the lady and make sure that nothing happened to her. Now that someone dared to kidnap her, that person had to face her wrath. She would have prevented the kidnapping from happening. But she wanted to know who it was that dared to orchestrate such a plan, to kidnap a person that her master cared about. Jack arrived in front of his room and opened the door before entering. He was surprised to find that Denali wasn't back yet. Thinking that maybe Celine was still out there, Jack decided to go and find her. Taking out his phone, he sent a text asking of her whereabouts. He was sure that if he called, he might reveal her presence to Celine. Although the tone of a text message being received could also alert Celine, it was easy to hide it. Not long after he sent the text, a reply that completely infuriated Jack came. "Master, there's someone who kidnapped her. I'm currently following them as I want to know who it was that had asked them to do that. Where are you now?" He hurriedly texted. "The western part of the park, they are heading in that direction." Without further ado, Jack rushed out of the room, using his full speed. As he rushed through the halls, a person could faintly hear the whistling of the air, making sounds of something passing at an extremely fast speed. Not long after, Jack had already gotten out of the lodging area. He had actually climbed the stairs towards the lower floor. The elevator could only delay him as he was using his fastest speed, not caring whether there was a person that would find out about the abnormality of his speed or not. In an indoor playground for children, there was a group of youngsters standing behind a young man. In front of them, there was a beautiful lady who was lying on the floor, unconscious. The young man looked at Celine and smiled. He had initially planned to have someone to go and bring her to the park before kidnapping her. Who would have thought that she would actually take the initiative to come to the park by herself? He had actually spent a good sum of money to bribe the person in charge of security for him to set up the plan. He had asked for the lights to be switched off and to make sure that no one other than Celine came to the park. As for the playground, he had also paid the guards to allow him to use it. This place was far from the lodging area, and so he wasn't worried that someone would find out about this. "Wake her up," The young man looked at one of the youths behind him and spoke. Got it. The youth replied before he used the water in the bottle that he was holding to sprinkle on Celine's face. And not long after that, Celine woke up. She was still confused, but the fear of being kidnapped was still there. She looked around confusedly as she got off the ground. When her eyes landed on the young man, she asked in disbelief, Collins, what do you mean by doing this? Collins? What do you mean by doing this? Although she had just regained her consciousness, she wasn't stupid not to know that she had actually been kidnapped. She looked at Collins with anger in her eyes clear as daylight. Haha, you don't have to worry about that, Celine. I brought you here because I want to propose to you again. Can you be my girlfriend? Collins smiled as he asked. Celine looked at him coldly and said, I already told you, Collins, I don't love you and I never will. Furthermore, you should stop dreaming about getting your hands on me. As she said this, Celine turned around, looking for the exit of the playground. Are you sure about that? I believe I can hold you as long as I want. Collins sneered at her. Then, he looked at her with a dark expression. Although he had expected that she wouldn't agree to this, he still didn't like the feeling of being rejected by a girl several times in a row. He was a man that believed that he should get whatever he wanted. No matter what it was, he had the right to get it. And Celine just so happened to be one of the things that he wanted. No matter the means, he was going to make sure that he made her his. So, tonight, he had no plan of letting her go. You shouldn't think that just because your family is worth a few billions higher than ours you can simply do as you like. Believe me when I say that once I get out of here, I'll make sure that you pay for it. Celine stated. It was also at this point that she found the exit. It was actually behind this group, and it seemed that it had been locked from the inside. All the same, Celine decided to go past the group so that she could head out of the door when the group of youths stood in her way, blocking her from leaving. What is wrong with you? I haven't even talked about you guys as you are collaborating with Collins to kidnap me. Do you think that Collins' family will actually go to war with my family because of you? Just you wait. I'm going to make sure that all of you know the consequences of your actions tonight. Celine frowned as she berated the group. The faces of the youths paled as they thought of this. It was true that if Celine's family actually decided to hold them accountable, they would really suffer. But what choice did they have? On one hand was Collins, whom, if they offended, they would face the same problem as the one that they would face from offending Celine. If they dared to disagree with Collins, it was true that he would make trouble for their families. In the end, they had come to a decision that, since Collins' family was stronger than the Gravy family, it would be better if they could be on his side. After all, it was better to have Collins' protection rather than his aggressiveness. In the end, they were sure that the two families wouldn't be on good terms by the end of this night. So, when they would be fighting, why would the Gravy family actually think of them? The small fries when they would be under immense pressure. Celine, there's no way that you are getting out of here unless you become my woman. Collins snickered as he gazed lewdly at Celine. Celine trembled from his intense gaze that hid no lust at all. She looked at Collins and asked, What are you planning to do? I plan to make you my woman, no matter the method. Collins said with a smile. Then, he continued, I'm sure that your family will agree to hand you over to me as long as my family pressurizes them. With a son-in-law like me, their business will definitely bloom due to the connections of my family. Celine looked at him and said coldly, No matter what you say, I won't be your woman. Even if my family agrees, I would rather be dead than become a woman of a scum like you. Collins' expression darkened when he heard her words. Then, he began smiling sinisterly while sizing her up and down. Licking his lips, he said, Then I guess I will have to make you my woman before you kill yourself. What do you think? Seeing his gaze on her body, Celine panicked. She hadn't expected that Collins would actually dare to do that to her. Her heart raced as she thought of this. She glared at him and said, If you dare to do this, I will make sure that you pay for it even if I have to lose my life for it. Whatever. I'm sure that your family will agree to me being your husband as long as they learn about what's going to happen here tonight. Collins snickered. Get her down for me. Collins ordered the youths behind him. With complicated expressions, the youths charged towards Celine. Celine wouldn't obviously stand idle and wait for her to be caught. She would try her chance to escape, even if it was only small, There might actually be a possibility of her getting herself out of the situation. As she hurriedly retreated from the group, she couldn't help but think of Jack. She thought that things would be better if he were here. He wouldn't let the scum here to defile her, right? She tried her best to outrun the group, but in the end, she moved further from the entrance and was now having a wall behind her. Not giving up, she picked a stick that she assumed was used by children to play and threw it at the youths that were heading her way. But the one that the stick was about to hit easily evaded it. And no matter what effort she put in, she was finally subdued and pressed onto the ground. Collins walked over with a smile on his face. He looked at the already tearing Celine for a moment and said, "Now look how things are. Had you agreed to be my girlfriend, things wouldn't have gotten to this point. So, you can only blame yourself." Although tears were flowing from her eyes, she didn't make a sound. She stared at Collins with eyes full of hatred. All the same, she thought that she would never give up no matter what. She wouldn't let him see her sobbing like a weakling. "I like the determination in your eyes. I would like to see what your expression will be like after I break you," Collins stated before bending down to start undressing her.
Bang!
Boom! No sooner had he finished speaking that there was a loud sound coming from the entrance of the playground. This stunned everyone inside. They looked at the door and couldn't help but have their mouths hanging open when they saw what had actually happened. The double doors of the playground had actually been taken down. The doors were over 6 inches thick and they were steady. But now, they had been broken. Before they could ask themselves how the door had actually been broken, they heard a cold voice that sent chills down their spines. "Can you repeat? Can you repeat what you just said?" And alongside the voice, a figure walked into the playground out of the shadows. Silver hair, cold blue eyes, stunning handsome face. Jack walked into the building and stared coldly at the group. When his gaze landed on Celine, who was being held onto the ground by several youths, his gaze became even colder as the fury in his heart intensified. At this moment, he had already sentenced each and every youth here to death. No matter who it was, as long as they participated tonight, they would be killed without mercy. Jack's appearance was out of everyone's expectations. While the youths were surprised, they also didn't know what to do. On the other hand, Collins retracted the hand that was just about to touch Celine. Then, he stared at Jack coldly as he asked, "What the F***CK are you doing here? Get lost before I lose my temper." Celine at this moment was completely excited. She had never expected that at her time of need, Jack would actually appear to save her. But on remembering that Jack was just a single person and there were several youths here, she couldn't help but panic. "Jack, get out of here. It's dangerous," she shouted, not wanting to see him getting hurt because of her. Jack didn't reply. Instead, he spoke to the air. "Break all of their hands, except for him. I will do it myself." Just as the group was wondering what was going on, a shadow flashed and before long, screams akin to the pigs being slaughtered echoed in the playground. One by one, Denali held the hands of the 8 youths and broke them without restraint. With her strength and speed, she could easily break their hands before they could react. Collins was terrified when he saw that the group behind him was wailing on the ground, with their hands already bent in weird shapes. Fear completely struck him as he looked at the culprit of all this. It was a lady that was a great beauty. She was currently wearing a cream-colored dress. In her arms, she was already holding Celine. Although she was beautiful, her expression was extremely cold as it sent chills down his spine. The fine hairs on his skin stood up to the maximum. He could feel great danger from the woman before him. For the first time in his life, when looking at a woman, there was no lust in his eyes. Instead, there was great fear.
Top, top, top.
The sound of approaching footsteps merged with the loud and painful screams of the youths who were rolling on the ground in pain, painted a picture of a horror scene in Colin's mind. His butt was currently on the ground as he was sandwiched from 2 sides. He didn't know where to go to. He wanted to run, but the fear in his heart made him unable to move. Jack arrived in front of Collins and spoke. "Since you have a problem with making this part of your body tame, I will just help you with that." And immediately after he finished speaking, he kicked Collins' crotch. Crack. The sound of something breaking could be heard even with the painful screams of the youths. What followed this was another terrifying and ear-piercing scream that spread for almost 500 meters diameter. Crack. The sound of something breaking could be heard even with the painful screams of the youths. What followed this was another terrifying and ear-piercing scream that spread for almost 500 m radius. The scream was so terrifying in that it made those who were wailing from having their 2 limbs broken forget about it. At this moment, even if their hands were broken, they felt lucky that their 3rd one wasn't. Unconsciously, they pulled their legs together before turning their backs towards Jack. This was an instinct for all men when they see something like this happen to another man's 3rd arm. Even though they were in pain, they had finally decided to stay silent because they were afraid that they would attract the attention of the devil. How could they afford to entertain him? Of course, Jack had no intention of dealing with those guys the same way that he was dealing with Collins. They had been instigated, and the worst mistake that they did was to hold Celine down. On the other hand, Collins had the courage to go ahead and actually think of defiling her. Since he only used that part of his body to think, he might as well destroy it so that his suppressed brain could start functioning later on. Celine, on the other hand, was at first surprised by the cries of the youths that were holding her in place on the ground. Then in the next second, after all the hands that were holding her down disappeared, she felt someone lifting her off the floor. When she managed to catch the appearance of the person that had helped her, she was completely dumbfounded. Wasn't this the same woman that she had seen in Jack's room? How come she was here? And why was she helping her? As more questions appeared in her mind, Celine gazed at the wailing youths on the ground. Although their screams could incite pity from others, that was only from those that didn't know what had actually happened. She, as the victim, didn't have any pity for them. In fact, she felt that losing a hand was not enough punishment for them. After all, tonight, had it not been for Jack, she would have lost one of the most precious things to a woman. She now just wanted to beat them up now that she had a chance. But she still held back the impulse and went back to observing the lady that was holding her. She was originally supposed to feel malice towards the lady, but seeing her face and how she was serious in protecting her, Celine just couldn't find herself hating Denali. They were competitors, right? Why was there no spirit of competition? As she asked herself these questions, she finally thought of something. This lady that was holding her, she was only a little older than her. But not only was she extremely beautiful, but she was so powerful that she could handle a group of youths in just a few seconds. Celine found herself admiring Denali. Now, she wished that she couldn't be a woman who would be a burden to Jack, where she would only be waiting for him to come and save her. Instead, she wanted to be one that could at least fight alongside him. On the other hand, after screaming for a few more seconds, Collins finally fainted from pain. Jack gazed at him coldly. This was obviously not going to end here. He had to make sure that this guy was going to suffer. Had he not told Denali to come and follow Celine? Just imagining what would have happened to her, he felt the fury in his heart intensifying. But now, there was something that completely displeased him. He shifted his gaze from Collins, who was lying on the floor, to Celine. Upon seeing that there was nothing wrong with her, he heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he looked at Denali and asked, "Why did you only take action at the last moment?" This was what displeased him completely. After all, Denali was present all this while. She should have taken action the moment that she found the mastermind. In the end, she only took action the moment that he arrived here, just when Collins was about to get his claws on Celine. Jack felt that it was bad enough that the youths had actually kidnapped and carried Celine away. But for them to hold her onto the ground the way he found them when he entered, that was unforgivable. Feeling Jack's anger, Denali's heart trembled. At this moment, she knew that Jack was displeased with the way that she did things. "I'm sorry, boss. I was still trying to make sure that there was nobody else behind them," Denali replied with her head lowered guiltily. Her master had instructed her to protect Celine. In the end, not only had she allowed her to be kidnapped, she had also allowed her to be harassed by being pressed onto the ground by several men. Celine, on the other hand, was stunned. Acting at the last moment? Boss? What was going on here? She definitely couldn't understand what the two were talking about. But still, there was something that she understood. Jack was actually the lady's boss. And seeing how subservient Denali was, Celine could confirm that this was true. Then, she thought of how she had reacted when she saw Denali in Jack's room. Perhaps she should have confirmed the relationship between the two of them first, right? Thinking of her reaction, she blushed as she lowered her head, not willing to look into Jack's eyes. Denali, you know what I would have wanted you to deal with this? First, you could have stopped the kidnapping. Then, you should have used those that were supposed to do the kidnapping to find the one that had sent them. Jack paused for a moment. He then continued, you know what follows, right? Use the same way to find the real mastermind and deal with them all. Denali could have actually used this method. But at that time, she had felt that this was the fastest method of getting the ones behind the incident rather than questioning these youths one by one. What's more, although she thought that her master cared about Celine, she had never thought that it was to this extent. Her loyalty was to her master. So, she wouldn't mind using others as a means of getting what she wanted. At that time, she had thought that as long as she made sure that nothing happened to Celine, there would be no problem at all. In the end, it turned out that she was completely wrong. I'm sorry, boss. I was wrong. I promise that this won't repeat. Denali admitted her mistake. Taking a deep breath, Jack decided to let Denali go. This was the first mistake that she had made ever since she became his subordinate, but she had done a lot for him. So, he could forgive her this once. Never mind. But remember that when I tell you to look after someone, I mean that no harm should fall on that person. If you can't handle the situation, inform me immediately, Jack reminded. Got it, boss. Denali was relieved that her master had forgiven her. But all the same, she made a vow to make up for the mistake today by working harder in the future. Celine, are you okay? Jack asked.
Infine.
I'm sorry, Jack. I shouldn't have reacted that way. I caused you trouble. Celine shook her head as she said guiltily. Don't mind that. Jack waved his hand. Then, he thought of something and asked, by the way, what happened back then? You simply ran away. I couldn't understand it all. Hearing Jack's words, Celine's face turned scarlet. She couldn't bring herself to tell the real reason behind why she ran away. What's more, she was embarrassed to say it, considering that the person that she thought badly of was actually sent to look out for her. No, nothing. I just wanted some fresh air, that's all. Celine found an excuse. Though he could tell that she was lying, Jack decided not to pursue for the time being. He gazed at the group that was now gritting their teeth, enduring the pain that they were experiencing just to make sure that they played dead. Shaking his head, Jack looked at Denali and Celine before speaking. Denali, take her back. I'll deal with this mess first. Yes, boss. Denali nodded before she pulled Celine away. Although she was unwilling to leave, Celine still thought that she shouldn't cause Jack more trouble. So, she simply said, take care, Jack. Then, she left alongside Denali. Once they were a distance from the playground, they found out that there was a group of people who were heading there. It seemed that they had heard the screams coming from the playground. Celine was worried. She wanted to go ahead and talk to the guards that were heading there, when suddenly, her surroundings blurred and before she knew it, they were already a distance away from the playground. Before she could say a word, Denali spoke first. You will have to trust him. If he said that he was going to take care of it, then he will. Denali completely trusted Jack in that she believed that if he said he could do something, then he could. Hearing her words, Celine was stunned for a moment. Then taking a deep breath, she too decided to believe that Jack could actually handle the situation. As for how she got far from the playground area, remembering that Denali could actually deal with the youths in a matter of seconds, she decided not to ask about it. As they got further from the playground, she finally decided to ask something. What's your relationship with Jack? Although Denali was calling Jack boss, Celine just wanted to confirm their relationship. I'm his personal assistant. Denali replied simply. As a woman, she could already imagine what Celine was thinking. She had also happened to see Celine when she came to meet Jack. Additionally, she had seen the change of expression on Celine's face as she deliberated on what to do. Oh! Celine was surprised. But she didn't find that it was impossible that Jack had an assistant. She too had Faith who was helping her. And the way that Jack was busy during the past few days, it was obvious that he needed assistance. What were you doing now? A project? Celine continued asking. Denali smiled in response. She could tell that Jack really cared about this lady. So, giving her a piece of information that wasn't sensitive wasn't bad anyways. I was helping him find some information on someone, Denali stated. Someone? Could it be the one that wanted to kill him? Celine asked. Oh, you know about that? Denali was surprised. In any case, she wasn't there when the incident where Jonathan was attacked happened. So, she didn't know that Celine knew about this. Seeing Celine nod her head, Denali explained. That's right. I was looking for all the information about the one that had the intention of having him killed. I just arrived tonight, and he thought that it would be good if I could find the information that I could tonight.